Good evening from Holbox Island in the Mexican Caribbean. And what an evening it is. The sky is pretty clear and there's an awesome Milky Way out there. And that's also why I came out here to a place called Punta Cocos, which is all the way on the west of the island where it's nice and dark. I came here to photograph the Milky Way above the jetty here that's sticking out into the water. And it's really cool to be out photographing the Milky Way again. It's been quite a while for me since I've had the opportunity to do that. So yeah, pretty excited to be here under the night sky. So I actually came to check out this place a few days ago in the afternoon, and I thought that this jetty would be a really cool subject to photograph with the Milky Way. But unfortunately back then I couldn't know, and I didn't know that they actually turned these little lights on the jetty, these little LED lights. And I personally think it kind of ruins the photo a little bit. It creates too much distraction with all the light. But nonetheless, I think it might still be an okay photo. The Milky Way looks fantastic, so I hope that'll save the shot. So the plan is to take a few different exposures tonight. And the first one is going to be for the Milky Way, so the sky exposure. And that's going to be at ISO 2000, a 20-second exposure at f2.8, which is the fastest that this lens can go. And I do also have a long exposure noise reduction turned on in the camera because I think it might help a little bit. So the next shot I'm going to take is for the shadows or for the foreground. And what I'm going to do is do a longer exposure at a lower ISO in order to reduce some of the noise that you get with these higher ISO numbers. So I'm going to do probably like a 2-minute exposure, and I'm using the Sony Image Edge mobile app thingy to do that. So I'm just going to set the ISO to 800 and then turn the shutter to bulb. And yeah, press the shutter button. So essentially what I'm trying to do with this super long exposure is to make sure that the histogram is away from the far left side. So as you can see in this 20-second exposure, the histogram is all the way to the left, so it means I don't have a lot of details or any details in the shadows or the darkest areas of this image. If I move to the 2-minute exposure, you can see the histogram has moved away a little bit from the left side. But then I took an even longer exposure, and you can see this is a much better histogram, especially for the shadows here in the foreground. And to finish off, I'm going to do one more exposure, again a 20-second at ISO 2000, f2.8, but this time I'm going to light paint the jetty here a little bit, just to get a little bit more detail, which I could possibly use later when post-processing this image. This is the final image I ended up with, which was created by blending those 3 exposures in Photoshop and then editing the whole thing in Lightroom. So now that I have all my exposures, I'm just going to let the camera run a little time lapse here. And in the meantime, yeah, I'm just going to enjoy this beautiful night, look at the stars, and yeah, hopefully not get eaten by mosquitoes. As the Milky Way moved across the sky, I went to the other side of the jetty and shot this image. I personally like this composition much more, but it only revealed itself when the Milky Way was in this location. Earlier, it just wasn't possible to line up the jetty with the Milky Way from this angle. On my way back to my accommodation, I decided to stop by this little spot here. And I didn't come here before because I was actually worried about the light pollution here, because this spot is a lot closer to the center of Holbox Island, but it's actually not too bad. And even though the Milky Way is getting pretty low on the horizon, or at least the Milky Way core, I'm still getting some pretty decent shots. And to be honest, these might actually be my favorite photos of the night. So what I'm photographing here, I don't think you'll be able to see this on this footage here. There's this cool looking driftwood sticking out of the water into the sky. And I thought it would be a very cool composition with the Milky Way, and luckily enough it actually really works out. because I am working a little bit with light pollution. I'm not sure if you can see that right there, so I have to adjust my composition a little bit to exclude that out of the frame. So as you can see, that here, that is the driftwood that I'm talking about. For this final image, I ended up only using 2 exposures, one for the sky and a longer exposure for the foreground. Again, I used Photoshop to blend the exposures and Lightroom to do the editing. Alright, I think I pretty much have all the shots that I wanted to get tonight, and maybe even a little bit more with this extra little spot here. I'm just going to time-lapse a little bit more just because it's basically too good right now. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll throw that time lapse up right here, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.